The alarms blared across the Solar Defense Command. Red lights flashed as officers ran to their stations, their faces pale with fear. General Marcus Steele stood in the center of the command room, staring at the massive screen that displayed the impossible. An alien fleet, bigger than anything humanity had ever seen, moving straight toward Earth. Confirmed sighting at Jupiter's outer orbit, a young officer reported, her voice shaking. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, and they're coming fast. Steele clenched his jaw. Humanity had feared this moment for centuries, the day they would no longer be alone in the universe. But no one expected the first contact to be an invasion. The fleet was enormous, covering the stars like a black cloud. Their ships were unlike anything seen before, jagged, dark, and pulsing with an eerie green glow. Each vessel was built for war, heavily armored, and moving in perfect formation. The worst part, they weren't stopping. They had already passed Saturn without hesitation, destroying every probe and satellite in their way. "This isn't a scouting mission," Steele muttered. "They're here to wipe us out." The command center fell silent. No one argued. The alien fleet had ignored every attempt at communication. No warnings, no demands, just cold, unstoppable movement toward Earth. The world in panic. News of the approaching armada spread across Earth within hours. Cities fell into chaos. People fled to underground shelters, while governments held emergency meetings. Social media exploded with panic. Some begged for peace, others called for war. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Earth was hopelessly outmatched. The United Nations held a final emergency meeting. Every world leader was present, their faces grim. "We have no choice," President Eleanor Graves of the United Americas said. "We must prepare for war." "But how do we fight against something like this?" the European Federation's chancellor asked. "Their ships are bigger, faster, more advanced. We are nothing compared to them." General Steele stood. "We may be outgunned, but we are not out of options." He turned toward the holographic display of Mars. "If we make our stand at Earth, we lose. But if we fight at Mars, we might have a chance." The room fell into silence. Mars had been heavily fortified for decades. It wasn't just a colony. It was a battlefield waiting to be used. Massive railguns were hidden beneath its surface. Its moons had been turned into defense stations, and experimental weapons were waiting for their first real test. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. The fleet draws closer. The alien fleet moved past Jupiter's orbit. Every telescope on Earth captured the terrifying sight, hundreds of black warships moving in perfect sync, like a swarm of locusts. Every few hours, their weapons fired, destroying asteroids in their path, as if to remind humanity of their power. "They don't fear us," Steele said, watching the footage. "They see us as insects." The first Earth ships were sent to slow them down. They didn't last long. 24 destroyers, the pride of Earth's space navy, were sent toward the enemy fleet. They opened fire first, launching missiles and laser blasts. For a moment, it seemed like they had an effect. But then, the aliens responded. A single pulse from their warships vaporized the entire human fleet. There were no survivors. The desperate defense. The destruction of Earth's ships sent a clear message. There would be no negotiation, no mercy. The alien fleet continued toward Mars, undisturbed. On the Red Planet, final preparations were made. Soldiers loaded their weapons, defense systems were activated, and scientists worked day and night to finish humanity's greatest secret weapon. Then, as the alien fleet crossed the asteroid belt, something strange happened. A signal, deep, distorted, and filled with alien static, was intercepted. "What the hell is this?" Steele asked as the transmission was played. It wasn't a message to Earth. The aliens were speaking to each other, and they were laughing. The Martian sky was a deep, dark red, its thin atmosphere barely shifting as humanity prepared for what could be its final stand. The towering defense structures across the planet hummed with energy, their railguns aimed at the void above. Mars had always been seen as a stepping stone for human expansion, a place to explore, to colonize. But now it was a battlefield. General Marcus Steele stood in the underground command center, staring at the holographic display of the approaching alien fleet. They had passed the asteroid belt. Their speed had not slowed. Their course had not changed. They weren't just coming for Mars. They were coming for Earth. "We have one chance," Steele said to his officers. "We hit them at Mars, and we hit them hard. If we fail, there is nothing standing between them and Earth." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. Every man and woman here knew what was at stake. There was no retreat, no surrender, only victory or annihilation. The battle plan. Earth's brightest minds had spent decades fortifying Mars for a future war. They hadn't expected it to come so soon, but they were ready. "We will use Mars moons to our advantage," Admiral Riker explained, pointing to Phobos and Deimos on the holographic map. "We have mass drivers installed on Phobos. Deimos has been converted into a kinetic weapon platform. The enemy won't expect it. Massive cannons have been placed on Phobos, hidden beneath its rocky surface. They were designed to fire high-velocity tungsten rounds at speeds fast enough to punch through capital ships. Deimos, on the other hand, had been turned into a weapon itself. If needed, explosives could break it apart, turning it into a storm of deadly debris. "The orbital minefield is in position," Colonel Vasquez added. "If they try to approach Mars directly, they'll fly right into it." Steele nodded. The mines had been developed in secret, dark, silent spheres that activated only when they detected enemy energy signatures. They were invisible to normal sensors, waiting like predators in the dark. And finally, there was Project Ragnarok, the most classified weapon in human history. A last resort, a weapon designed for extinction. The first strike. The alien fleet was now close enough for visual confirmation. Hundreds of massive ships. Their hulls were not smooth like human vessels, but jagged, layered with what looked like organic armor. Their engines pulsed with eerie green energy, moving in perfect synchronization like a swarm of predators. And they weren't slowing down. "They don't fear us," Steele muttered. "They think we're already dead." He turned to his officers. "Make them regret it." The first shots came from Phobos. The mass drivers roared, launching tungsten rods the size of skyscrapers at the alien ships. The projectiles traveled at incredible speeds, cutting through the void like meteors. The first rod struck an enemy cruiser. There was no explosion, just a moment of silence before the ship split in two, torn apart by the sheer force of impact. The pieces drifted apart, flames flickering briefly in the vacuum of space before being snuffed out. A second rod hit another ship, crushing its hull like paper. For a moment, the command center erupted in cheers. The enemy could be hurt. They weren't invincible. But then, the aliens retaliated. The counterattack. Without hesitation, the alien fleet unleashed a response. Green energy pulses fired from their ships, moving faster than any human weapon. The first pulse struck Phobos. The entire moon shook as its surface cracked, explosions rippling across its surface. The next pulse shattered one of the mass drivers, sending debris spiraling into space. "Status on Phobos?" Steele barked. "Damage is severe, but one mass driver is still operational." An officer responded. "Keep firing," Steele ordered. The battle was escalating. The orbital mines activated, their silent forms drifting toward the enemy fleet. The first alien ship to trigger one was instantly consumed in a violent explosion, its armor peeling away as fire and shrapnel tore through its hull. Another mine detonated, then another. The enemy's formation broke as several ships exploded. "They're adapting," Vasquez warned. The aliens began scanning for the mines, firing energy waves that detonated them prematurely. They were learning. Fast. The fight for Mars. The first wave of alien ships broke through the minefield, heading straight for Mars. Surface defenses opened fire. Railguns hidden beneath the Martian soil emerged, launching hypervelocity rounds at the incoming fleet. Missiles streaked through the thin atmosphere, leaving trails of smoke as they sought their targets. The alien ships returned fire, their green energy beams carving into the Martian surface. Cities and military installations vanished in fiery eruptions. The ground trembled as shockwaves spread across the planet. In orbit, Earth's fleet engaged the enemy head-on. Human warships, smaller but faster, darted between the alien vessels, unleashing concentrated fire. The battle became chaos, with explosions lighting up the dark sky. Inside the command center, Steele watched as Earth's forces fought with everything they had. But it wasn't enough. The enemy was pushing forward. For every alien ship destroyed, 2 more replaced it. The defense line was collapsing. And then, the worst news came. They found the gap in our defenses. Riker shouted. A group of enemy warships is bypassing the main battle, heading straight for Earth. Silence fell over the command center. If those ships reached Earth, it was over. Steele clenched his fists. Activate Project Ragnarok. The officers froze. Some looked shocked, others terrified. But sir, do it, Steele ordered. Now, the secret weapon. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, a hidden facility came to life. For decades, scientists had worked on Project Ragnarok, unsure if they would ever use it. But now, there was no choice. The ground trembled. A massive structure began to rise from beneath the Martian soil. A colossal cannon, unlike anything seen before. It was miles long, powered by an energy source so dangerous that even its creators feared it. The alien fleet adjusted course, sensing something was wrong. Too late. The cannon fired. A beam of energy, brighter than a star, erupted from the weapon. It didn't explode on impact. It simply erased everything in its path. The first alien warship was vaporized instantly, leaving nothing behind. Then the second. Then the third. A massive chunk of the alien fleet was gone in a heartbeat. The remaining ships hesitated for the first time. They were afraid. And now, humanity knew the truth. The aliens weren't gods. They could be killed. The battlefield was a graveyard. Wreckage from alien warships drifted in orbit, shattered remains of what had once been an unstoppable force. Mars' surface was scorched and torn, its defenses barely holding on. But humanity was still standing. General Marcus Steele stood in the command center, his face grim. Project Ragnarok had turned the tide. But it wasn't over. The alien fleet was regrouping. They had suffered heavy losses, but they were not retreating. They won't make the same mistake twice, Admiral Riker muttered. Steele nodded. The aliens had underestimated humanity. Now they knew the truth. Humans were more dangerous than they had thought. If they attacked again, they would come prepared. The enemy's next move. A warning alarm blared. A new fleet was entering the system, twice the size of the first. They called reinforcements. Vask said, her voice tight with tension. The holographic display updated, showing a massive wave of enemy warships moving in perfect formation. Unlike the first fleet, these ships were different. Their energy signatures were stronger, their movements more coordinated. This isn't just another attack, Steele said. This is extermination. Earth's desperate response. A transmission came through from Earth. President Caldwell's face appeared on the screen. His expression hardened. General Steele, you must hold Mars at all costs, he said. If they break through, Earth won't survive. Steele exhaled slowly. He already knew that. We'll hold, he said, but we need reinforcements. They're coming, Caldwell said, but it'll take time. Time. That was the one thing they didn't have. A risky plan. Steele turned back to his officers. If we wait for them to come to us, we'll be overwhelmed. We have to take the fight to them. The room fell silent. A direct assault against an enemy fleet that size. It was suicide. Riker spoke first. "You're suggesting we attack." "Not just attack," Steele said. "We break them before they reach Mars." He pointed to the asteroid belt. "We lure them in, force them into the debris field. Our fleet is smaller, but we can use the environment to our advantage." Vasquez studied the map. "It's risky. It's the only chance we have," Steele said. The decision was made. The fleet prepared for battle. The trap is set. As the alien fleet advanced, humanity's warships moved into the asteroid belt. Stealth ships deployed decoys, making it appear as though they were retreating. The enemy took the bait. When the aliens entered the belt, the attack began. Railguns fired from hidden positions among the asteroids. Explosions erupted as human warships darted through the debris, using the floating rocks for cover. The aliens fought back, but their massive ships struggled in the chaotic battlefield. One by one, their warships fell. Humanity's fleet moved with precision, striking hard and fast. The aliens had numbers, but humans had strategy. And then something unexpected happened. A message from the enemy. For the first time, the aliens sent a transmission. The screen flickered, revealing a towering alien figure. Its body was covered in dark, shifting armor, and its glowing eyes burned with rage. "You are not meant to resist," it said in a deep, distorted voice. "Surrender now, and we will grant you mercy." Steele smirked. "Your first fleet said the same thing," he replied. "They didn't make it past Mars." The alien's eyes flared. "Then you will suffer." The transmission cut off. The battle wasn't over. It was only beginning. The battlefield was a storm of fire and destruction. The asteroid belt had given humanity an edge, but the alien fleet was adapting. Their warships moved with terrifying precision, adjusting their formations to minimize losses. Humanity had struck first, but the enemy was not breaking. If anything, they were becoming more ruthless. General Steele stood in the command center, his expression unreadable as the battle unfolded. Railgun rounds tore through the void, slicing into enemy hulls, but for every alien ship destroyed, more took its place. The enemy commander had underestimated humanity once, but now it was clear they were learning. The communications channel crackled. "General, we've lost the Tempest and Vanguard," Vasquez reported, her voice strained. "Multiple hull breaches on the Oran. We're holding, but we can't keep this up forever." Steele clenched his fists. They had to finish this before their forces were overwhelmed. "What's the status on the ambush?" he asked. Admiral Riker turned from his station. "The Second Fleet is in position, but the aliens are advancing faster than we predicted. If we don't spring the trap now, they'll punch through our defenses." Steele made his decision. Initiate the maneuver. Now. In the asteroid field, hidden human warships powered up their engines. The enemy fleet, focused on the battle ahead, didn't notice until it was too late. From the darkness, human battleships surged forward, weapons blazing. Missiles, railguns, and kinetic weapons struck the aliens from behind, turning their formation into chaos. For the first time, the enemy hesitated. Their movements, once perfect and calculated, faltered. Steele watched the battle shift. "Now we press the advantage," he ordered. "All ships, push forward." The human fleet advanced with renewed fury. Fighters weaved through the debris, unleashing precise strikes. Capital ships focused their fire on the enemy's largest warships, tearing through their shields and armor. The aliens retaliated, but they were no longer dictating the battle. The trap had worked, and now the invaders were on the defensive. Then something unexpected happened. A massive explosion erupted in the center of the enemy fleet. One of their own warships had detonated, not from an external attack, but from within. Steele narrowed his eyes. What was that? A tech officer quickly analyzed the data. "Sir, it looks like an internal failure, or sabotage." For the first time, Steele felt a flicker of doubt. Sabotage. Could it be possible? The aliens were brutal and efficient, but disloyalty among their ranks had never been observed before. Before he could dwell on it, another explosion rocked the enemy fleet. More alien ships began to drift, their systems failing. The once mighty armada was collapsing from the inside. A new transmission appeared on the main screen. The alien leader's face flickered into view, its expression twisted with rage and something else. Fear. You are not the only ones who resist, the alien said, its voice distorted. We were never meant to lose. But the High Command is afraid. They will erase us before they admit defeat. Steele exchanged glances with his officers. This was new. The aliens were fighting amongst themselves. The enemy leader continued, its voice urgent. You will win this battle. But if you do not act, the war will continue. Their reinforcements are coming. We have no choice but to fight them, or be purged. Steele leaned forward. Are you saying there's a rebellion in your ranks? The alien's image flickered. We were sent to conquer you, but now we see that our masters fear you. They fear what you will become. The screen cut to static. A moment later, the alien fleet's formation completely collapsed. Some warships turned on each other, while others tried to flee. The once organized assault had become total chaos. Humanity had survived the battle, but something much bigger was happening. The enemy wasn't just losing. They were breaking apart, and that meant the war was far from over. The battlefield was no longer just a war zone. It was a graveyard of broken ships and dying embers of an empire that once believed itself invincible. Human warships maneuvered through the wreckage, picking off the last remnants of the alien fleet. But even as victory seemed certain, something far more dangerous was unfolding. General Steele stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as his fleet continued its assault. The alien armada was crumbling, not because of humanity's firepower alone, but because of something deeper. The enemy had turned on itself. Reports flooded in from across the system. Alien ships firing on their own, internal detonations taking out entire warships, and distress signals coming from factions within the fleet. Sir, we have incoming transmissions from multiple alien vessels, Vasquez reported, her fingers flying over the control panel. Some are surrendering. Others are warning us to retreat. Steele narrowed his eyes. Warnings? That made no sense. Put them through. The main screen flickered, and the image of an alien officer appeared. Its face, usually cold and unreadable, was filled with something unusual. Panic. Human commander. The alien spoke in a strained voice. You have forced our fleet into chaos, but your victory is not complete. The High Command will not allow this loss to stand. They will erase everything. Steele's jaw tightened. Explain. The alien hesitated, glancing off-screen as if someone was watching. Then it spoke quickly, as if time was running out. We were sent to conquer you, but we were never meant to fail. Our masters fear defeat more than anything. They have protocols for situations like this. If a fleet is compromised, if a battle is lost, they do not allow survivors. They will cleanse this system before they let you claim victory. A cold silence filled the bridge. Steele exchanged glances with Admiral Riker and Vasquez. The meaning was clear. This war wasn't over. It was about to get worse. Riker frowned. Are you saying they're going to destroy their own fleet? Why would they do that? The alien's expression darkened. To ensure no knowledge of this defeat reaches the core worlds. To erase any chance of rebellion spreading. If we fall to you, others may rise against them. They will not let that happen. Vasquez's screen flashed red. She sucked in a sharp breath. Sir, I'm picking up a massive energy surge on the edge of the system. Steele turned toward her. What kind of energy surge? She swallowed. Something big is coming. Whatever it is, it's not a normal warship. The alien on screen looked away for a moment, as if listening to something only it could hear. Then it turned back, eyes filled with something humanity had never seen in them before, desperation. "It has already begun," the alien said. "They have activated the purge protocol." The transmission cut. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the proximity alarms blared. Sensors lit up with an incoming object. No, multiple objects. They weren't standard warships. They weren't even ships at all. Vasquez's voice was tight. "General, I think they just launched planetary-scale weapons." Steele's hands clenched into fists. The aliens had lost this battle, but instead of accepting defeat, they were going to try to wipe out everything. This wasn't just about erasing their own fleet anymore. This was about making sure no one, human or alien, lived to tell the story. Admiral Riker cursed under his breath. "They'd rather burn the whole system than let us win." Steele took a deep breath. The battle wasn't over. It had only changed. The fleet had to act fast, or everything they fought for, everything they sacrificed, would be lost in fire. "All ships," Steele commanded, his voice calm despite the storm raging around him. "Prepare for immediate interception. We stop those weapons, or Earth is next." The hunt for survival had just begun. The void of space was alive with chaos. The remnants of the alien fleet drifted like shattered bones, their empire's strength broken before it could even reach Earth. But victory was not yet secured. Humanity had proven its strength. But now, a new threat loomed, one far deadlier than warships and invasion fleets. General Steele stood on the command deck of the Indomitable, his eyes locked on the glowing tactical display. The alien fleet's destruction had triggered something worse. The purge protocol had begun. "Sir, incoming signatures. 16. No. 23 confirmed." Vasquez's voice was tight with tension. "These aren't warships. They're something else." Admiral Riker leaned forward, his expression grim. "What the hell are we looking at?" The main screen shifted, bringing up a magnified image. At first glance, the incoming objects looked like massive asteroids. But as sensors scanned deeper, the truth became clear. These were not natural. "They're purge drones," Vasquez said, her fingers flying over the console. "Self-replicating weapons designed to strip a planet of all life. If they reach Mars, it's over. If they break past Mars, Earth is next." Silence gripped the bridge for a moment. Then Steele spoke, his voice like iron. "Then we stopped them here." The fleet moved as one, engines roaring to life, warships forming a defensive line between Mars and the incoming threat. They had fought to keep Earth safe. Now they had to fight to keep it from being erased. The first drones entered weapons range. The Indomitable fired first, a barrage of railgun rounds cutting through the lead drone. It shattered instantly, its body crumbling into lifeless fragments. But then, something horrifying happened. The pieces didn't just scatter. They moved. They reshaped. Each fragment became a new drone. Vasquez paled. "Sir, they're self-replicating. Every time we destroy one, it spawns more." Steele gritted his teeth. The enemy had designed these things to be unstoppable. But nothing was truly unstoppable, not against humanity. "Then we changed tactics," Steele ordered. "Stop using standard weapons. Switch to energy disintegration. We burned them at the molecular level. No pieces, no replication." The fleet adjusted. Plasma beams and high-intensity laser arrays lit up the void. One by one, the drones fell, not splitting, not reforming. They burned. But the enemy was relentless. More drones surged forward, faster than before. They learned. They adapted. And now, they were pushing through the line. One drone slipped past the defenses, heading straight for Mars. "Interceptor teams, now!" Steele barked. A squadron of fighters broke formation, engines flaring as they chased the rogue drone. It twisted through space, dodging, accelerating, faster than anything should be able to move. The lead interceptor pilot, Lieutenant Carter, locked onto it, his fingers tightening on the trigger. "Come on, you bastard," he muttered. The drone suddenly jerked, shifting direction at an impossible angle. Carter fired, but the shot missed. His HUD flashed red. The drone had a new target. It was no longer heading for Mars. It was heading straight for the Indomitable. Alarms blared. Vasquez's voice rang out. "Sir, it's going for us." Steele had a split second to decide. "All weapons, focus fire. Take it down now." The bridge shook as the Indomitable fired everything it had. Missiles, lasers, railguns. Every weapon system lit up the void. The drone tried to evade, but it couldn't dodge everything. A railgun round struck it dead center. The drone exploded in a burst of blue energy. Cheers erupted across the fleet, but Steele didn't celebrate. He turned to Vasquez. "Status." She checked her screens. Then her face went pale. "Sir, there are more incoming." The screen flickered, showing a new wave of signatures. The first attack was just a test. Now, the real storm was coming. Steele took a deep breath. "Then we hold the line. We don't let a single one past us." The fate of Mars and Earth depended on it. The battlefield stretched beyond Mars, a graveyard of shattered drones and wrecked ships. But despite their efforts, the enemy kept coming. The purge drones were learning, adapting, pushing against humanity's last line of defense. General Steele gripped the edge of the command console aboard the Indomitable, his jaw tight. The fleet had held so far, but how much longer could they last? Every victory came at a cost. Ships damage, weapons overheating, pilots lost. And still, the enemy showed no sign of stopping. "Sir, new wave incoming," Vasquez reported. Her voice was steady, but Steele could hear the exhaustion beneath it. "How many?" She hesitated. Then, in a grim tone, she answered, "Too many." On the main screen, dozens, no, hundreds, of enemy signatures swarmed toward them. These weren't just more drones. They were bigger, faster, and moving in perfect synchronization. The enemy had studied them. And now, they were throwing everything they had. Admiral Riker exhaled sharply. "They're trying to overwhelm us. Standard defenses won't hold against this." Steele nodded. He already knew that. Humanity had survived the first waves because they had adapted, but if they kept playing defense, they would be wiped out. They needed something more, something unexpected. "Contact the fleet," Steele said, his voice firm. "Prepare for maneuver Omega-13. Riker's eyes widened. "Sir, that's a last resort tactic. If it fails." "It won't," Steele interrupted. "It can't." Across the fleet, captains received the command. They knew what it meant. Every ship adjusted course, moving into a new formation, a trap designed not just to fight, but to annihilate. The drones accelerated, unaware of the danger. They had learned to counter humanity's attacks, but they hadn't learned fear. That would be their mistake. The first wave reached the fleet's front line. The Indomitable fired first, launching experimental EMP warheads. The explosion sent an energy pulse through space, short-circuiting the lead drones. They shuddered, froze, then shattered under the barrage of railgun fire. The enemy faltered, but only for a moment. The second wave adjusted, maneuvering past the disabled drones, shifting tactics again. They were relentless. Then the trap was sprung. The fleet's ships, which had slowly spread apart, suddenly moved in unison, closing in around the enemy from all sides. The aliens, designed to attack head-on, were now trapped. They were boxed in, their movements restricted, their ability to dodge cut off. Now, Steele commanded. Every ship in the fleet unleashed its full arsenal. Plasma cannons burned through the enemy ranks. Railguns tore through drone hulls. Disintegration beams sliced apart anything that tried to escape. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was extermination. One by one, the purge drones fell. They tried to adapt, to split apart like before, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The screen flashed with explosions. The enemy swarm, which had seemed endless just moments before, was shrinking, fast. Vasquez let out a breath of disbelief. It's working. But Steele didn't relax. Not yet. He scanned the battlefield, searching for any sign of a final trick, a hidden danger. And then he saw it. A single drone, larger than any they had faced before. It hadn't engaged in the fight. It had just waited, watching, learning. And now it moved. The massive drone burst forward, faster than anything their sensors had ever recorded. It tore through wreckage, dodging past gunfire, heading straight for the heart of the fleet, straight for the Indomitable. "Sir," Vasquez started. "I see it," Steele said. His mind was already racing. They had seconds to react. No ship in the fleet was fast enough to stop it. But there was one thing that might. "Lieutenant Carter," Steele said into the comms, "are you still in the fight?" A voice crackled back. "Still breathing, sir." Barely. Carter was one of the best pilots in the fleet. And right now, he was humanity's last hope. "You see that target?" Steele asked. "Yeah," Carter replied. "I see it." "Then take it down." Carter's fighter veered off, engines burning at full capacity. The massive drone was seconds away from the Indomitable. If it reached them, it could wipe out the entire fleet. Carter pushed his ship to the limit. "Not today," he muttered. He fired once, twice. The shots hit, but barely dented the drone's armor. It kept coming. Carter gritted his teeth. "Fine, if that's how it is." He cut the engines, flipping his fighter into a direct collision course. "Lieutenant," Steele's voice came through the comms. "No other choice." Carter pushed the throttle. The drone loomed in his view screen, filling it completely. Then, in a final moment of defiance, he smiled. And his ship crashed straight into the drone's core. A massive explosion erupted, blinding white light consuming everything. The shockwave sent the Indomitable spinning, the force rattling through the entire fleet. And then, silence. When the light faded, the drone was gone. The fleet was still standing. Humanity had survived. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. Steele stared at the battlefield, at the wreckage, at the price they had paid. His hands tightened into fists. The enemy had come for Earth, and they had failed. Now, it was humanity's turn to strike back. The battlefield was silent. Not the kind of silence that meant peace, but the eerie, hollow quiet that came after destruction. The remains of the enemy fleet drifted in orbit around Mars, burned out husks of once powerful warships. But General Steele wasn't celebrating. He knew better. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The enemy had come for Earth. They had sent an armada, expecting an easy victory. They had underestimated humanity. And now, they had paid the price. Steele stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his gaze fixed on the wreckage beyond the viewport. His crew had fought like demons. They had given everything. And yet something still didn't feel right. "Status report," he said, his voice calm but firm. Vasquez ran her fingers over the console, scanning for any remaining threats. "Enemy fleet is completely neutralized. No signs of movement. No transmissions. We got them, sir." Steele exhaled slowly. That should have been good news. It wasn't. "Then why doesn't it feel like we won?" Admiral Riker stepped forward, arms crossed. "Because it was too easy." The room went quiet. No one wanted to say it, but they all felt the same thing. The enemy had sent a fleet large enough to destroy entire worlds. And yet, humanity had held them back. How? Steele turned back to Vasquez. "Scan the wreckage again. Look for anything unusual." She frowned but obeyed. Her hands danced across the console, and the scanners hummed to life. For a few long seconds, there was nothing. Then, "Sir, I got something." Steele's gut twisted. "Show me." On the main screen, a section of the battlefield lit up. It was one of the destroyed enemy command ships. At least, it should have been destroyed. That ship's reactor should have gone critical when we hit it, Vask said, "But look, its core is still intact." Steele narrowed his eyes. "Are you telling me someone shut it down manually?" Vasquez nodded. "And not just that. I'm detecting faint energy signatures inside the wreckage." Riker's face darkened. "Survivors." Steele didn't hesitate. "Get me a strike team. We're going in." The boarding craft docked against the silent enemy warship. Steele led the team himself, moving with careful precision. The ship's halls were dark, illuminated only by flickering emergency lights. It was eerie, like stepping into a tomb. The team moved forward, weapons raised. Every step echoed. The air was thick with the smell of burned metal. "Stay sharp," Steele murmured. They advanced deeper, past ruined consoles and sparking wires. Then they reached the command center, and what they found sent a chill through Steele's spine. A single figure stood in the dim light, its back turned to them. It wasn't like the others. This wasn't a mindless drone. It wore armor, sleek, black, and covered in glowing symbols. Slowly, the figure turned. Its face was hidden behind a mask, but its voice was unmistakable. "Humans," it said in perfect English. The team raised their weapons. Steele held up a hand, stopping them. "You understand us," he said. The figure tilted its head. "Of course. We have been watching you for a long time." Steele's jaw clenched. "Who are you?" The figure chuckled. It was a cold, unnatural sound. "You think you have won," it said, "but you have only passed the first test." Steele's finger tightened on the trigger. "Test." The figure didn't move. "You believe we sent an armada to conquer you, that this was an invasion." It shook its head. "No, General. This was a trial. And now, the real war begins." The words hit like a hammer. Steele barely had time to process them before the ship's systems suddenly came back to life. Red warning lights flashed, alarm sirens wailed, and through the viewport, he saw it, something massive, something beyond comprehension, emerging from the void. A second fleet. No, not a fleet. A force unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The masked figure took a step forward. "Now, let us see if your species is worthy of survival." The battle for Earth had ended, but the war for humanity's future had just begun.